two back in that backfield behind Tony Pollard. Let's talk Super Bowl picks. Brian, if you want to flash them up there, who've we got on the box? And who've we not got in the box, actually?
Well, Colin's got nothing in the box for his MVP and Rookie of the Year, but we'll come to that shortly, because
we'll come to that.
The rest of us were able to get our selections in prompt time for tonight's show. But now, in fairness, I know Colin has been quite torn on it. I'm assuming the Super Bowl selections haven't changed. This is the matchups, and certainly from my point of view, I've gone with the 49ers to play the Chiefs. And I'll just pull it back slightly. I've also gone for the Saints to make the championship game and play the 49ers and obviously lose out. I think the Saints will be in the championship game this year. And the big shock, big surprise, but there you go. And obviously, there we have it. And I'll let yourselves take over your own selections in terms of who you're picking to be in the Super Bowl.
Colin, do you want to jump in there?
I am going to sound the audible klaxon at this point. I am, because of what's happened with Chris Jones, because of the Kelsey injury, and despite having Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid, I'm going to say it is a Bengals Seahawks Super Bowl. And I know that will be a huge surprise, but it is so difficult to go back to back. And when you're already having issues at this time of the year, we also, Nick Bosa hasn't got that contract sorted with the 49ers. We haven't mentioned that. That's another key component to factor in. You want everything to be right. The Eagles had that real feel-good factor about them. And I think that ultimately is what I'm going to go with. The Bengals were a huge surprise when they got there a few years ago. I think the Seahawks can do the same. The Eagles surprised a lot of people last year. I think the Bengals have been building towards this. I think they're going to come out and they are going to look to ensure that they're the number one seed in the AFC. And I think I'm going to change it up. I am going to say, the Bengals versus the Seahawks in Las Vegas.
Yeah, I got like 3 of the 4 of us have the 49ers in the Super Bowl, including myself. As you say, the Nick Bosa thing I don't love. Was hoping that would be sorted out before now. Also have to say the Trey Lance trade and then bailing on Lance kind of reminded you that the 49ers don't get everything right. Brilliant and all as they have been over the last couple of seasons, like that was an absolutely disastrous draft pick, and what they gave up to get him, when you look at the players who ended up going in other directions off the back of the effectively 3 first-round picks that the 49ers used to get that pick and trade up for Lance, given that they bailed on him so quickly, absolutely disastrous. I think GMs in other situations might be looking for the exit door or being ushered towards it for a mistake of that magnitude. And we're placing a lot of faith in Brock Purdy and what Shanahan can do with him, and hoping that elbow is right after the Tommy John surgery, which is not an easy thing to come back from. There's an opinion been voiced that maybe part of the key to Purdy's success, apart from playing in the most quarterback-friendly system we've ever seen in the history of the NFL, was people simply didn't have an awful lot of tape on him. He was an absolute wild card. He was quite unpredictable, and what he did was quite unexpected, and that might not be the case, and he won't have that going for him this year when they start up. But I still think, as you've said, the best starters in the NFL, there's just so much talent in every available position, so many leaders on that field, so many guys who've been there and done it, and they haven't had the best of luck over the past couple of years. One of the reasons that I favoured the 49ers over the Eagles to get to the Super Bowl ultimately is I kind of thought the Eagles had things fall quite nicely for them last season in a lot of respects, whereas the 49ers had quite the opposite. And you would hope that from the 49ers perspective, that bad luck doesn't persist this time around. Nobody, Brian, you're not going to change your Super Bowl picks, I take it?
No, I don't see the need to make any alterations to my Super Bowl selection. I'm very confident in both my teams. I think the 49ers were Purdy full season. McCaffrey potentially not injured this year. Kittle coming back, reasonably 100% this year. I think Bosa thing will get resolved. I think the 49ers are the standout team in the NFC to go to Super Bowl, and I think the Chiefs will find a way to get themselves to Vegas. Interestingly enough, I just wanted to say that outside of Colin, Aiden has gone Niners as well, but obviously Aiden has he's very much bought into the Steelers. MVP picket. He has the Steelers representing the AFC in the Super Bowl.
You've Justin Jefferson. Let's talk MVPs. You've Justin Jefferson as your MVP, Brian. You're the only one of us who's. So I was going to say you're the only one of us who's gone for a non-quarterback. We don't know who Colin has gone for yet, but we'll reveal that very, very soon. But you've gone for Jefferson as MVP, and yet you don't see the Vikings making the Super Bowl. What's his path to MVP
then? The numbers in which he could put up over the course of the season, the touchdowns, like. I'm not saying they're a one-man offense, but like he's the type of player now that we've seen in the past where, and we spoke recently about that game against Buffalo Bills in last November where it was a Hail Mary type of play and he pulls it down. He's kind of become a player that's to large extent uncoverable. And okay, we've seen games like in the playoffs against the Giants where he was taken out of the game, but over the course of the season, his numbers and his play are just fantastic. And I think we're so focused and so used to seeing quarterbacks. I just thought let's go for someone who was great to watch, entertaining, and ultimately will put up huge numbers over the course of the season. So maybe it's a bit of a punt, but I think it's time for a player of that quality to be reflected. He'd be reflected soon with a massive contract. It'd be nice to see a player like that reflective in terms of the awards and the accolades that come with his performance on the field.
Colin, your MVP, drum roll.
Yeah, it's not. I'd love to see Justin Jefferson win it. But ultimately, this is a QB award, and if I have the Bengals being going to the Super Bowl, I know it's a regular season award, but I just said that I expect them to come out and go hell for leather to get that number 1 seed. So I'm with you, Connor. I think it's Joe Burrow. I think year 4 in the system, albeit one of those obviously injury shortened, but ultimately he's had the same receivers. They've upgraded the line. I think the running game should be better. They make it really good adjustments. Like think about how last year they went to playing in the gun rather than playing under center to help the running game. That's you could start this and you could say, look, it's Patrick Mahomes' award, but it's kind of who outside of Patrick Mahomes. I do think it would be great to see it go to a non-QB because it really has become just a QB award. But I don't see voters going that way, unfortunately.
Any chance of a defensive player winning MVP? I know Fred Flunk in the comments has said Micah Parsons, who's a pretty good shout if the voters ever went for defensive players.
Yeah, like you'd love to see them kind of recognize the players that are out there, and I think Parsons is certainly my favorite for defensive player of the year, and I do expect him to have a monster season. I think the fact that they kept Dan Quinn around is a huge help. But for MVP, I mean, what would you'd need to be. Like he'd have to be breaking Reggie's record of more sacks than games to ultimately, I think, be in with even a chance of getting the MVP.
Brian, you've the Browns rolling this year. Would Myles Garrett be a shout for Defensive Player of the Year in your view?
I think for any defensive player to win it, they would have to be literally taking over games, and that to me is like 6 or 7, 8 type of games consistently over the course of a season where they're winning games, and the storyline is how dominant the defense was in that particular player. It just doesn't happen, unfortunately. Maybe it should, but like realistically, I think we're talking about a wide receiver not getting it, and that's too big of a show. It's a similar scenario with the defense. Micah Parsons is a great show. You could argue Bosa in San Fran, if he comes back and gets his contract, he to me would be the most likeliest player to come out of this particular award as the MVP.
Let's wrap it up with rookies then. Brian, we'll go back to you first. Who do you think is going to be in the running for Rookie of the Year, and who do you think is going to take the award?
I've gone with Jahmyr Gibbs, the running back, second running back selected in the draft. Bijan Robinson was the key talking point. Everybody felt that the Lions reached to move up to get him. Well, they'd already done a trade and they select him with their first pick. And the nature of this Lions team this year in terms of their offense and how explosive they could be, whether they're winning the games or not, to to me, kind of lends a hand in a team that will have an explosive running game. We've seen DeAndre Swift move on. We've seen David Montgomery come in from the Bears. I think he's in to complement a run game that will all run through Gibbs. And I think Gibbs is the type of player that we could see a Saquon Barkley type of first year where he breaks out and he's a standout player for the Lions. So for that reason, I mean, a lot of people will feel it's Bijan, but I wanted to go somewhere different. And when I considered both of them, I thought which offense is more likely to be explosive and have those big plays, and that for me is the Lions. So on that basis, I went with Gibbs as the running back from the Lions to be my rookie of the year.
Colin, who's your rookie of the year?
I think it may not be Bijan who gets it, because Bijan could ultimately be in the running for offensive player of the year. I wouldn't be surprised. I think the entirety of the Falcons offense is going to go through Bijan. Though I think Garrett Wilson would be my favorite for offensive player, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was to be Bijan. In terms of, another rookie, I think Zay Flowers. I think he could be a really, really nice piece. He's come in. He doesn't have to be everything for the Ravens, because Odell is there and Mark Andrews is there and Lamar is established. So this is not, Jerry Jeudy coming into the Broncos a few years ago where the quarterback was terrible and there was really not nobody else. No, there was enormous pressure from the off. Flowers can be a very good player in a very good team, and potentially somebody who may, though I like Brian's reasoning as well, that it could well be Gibbs.
Yeah, I like, from what I've seen, I like Jackson Smith and Jigba. Obviously, the little wrist injury, not ideal. Zay Flowers, I think, is tremendously exciting. I've gone for Bryce Young. I just think everything we've seen and heard from him, not just the poise play on the field, but the noises out of Carolina. I think, again, a shout out to Phoebe Schechter and the Sky crew. She gave us a lot of intel on what it was like going over there and meeting them and the impact that he made on their entire crew and how impressed they were by just his knowledge of the game, his ability to read. I suppose, people have put so much emphasis on his height or lack thereof, the whole, canard about difficulty seeing over the offensive line, at the same time, not something that seemed to particularly overbother him in college. I think if there's something that you've seen from Young that I really like, it's that he's clearly compensated for that by his mastery and his research and what he's done to master the pre-snap read. I think for a rookie, look, you don't expect him to slot straight in and be Tom Brady, but I think he's gonna win on the basis of what he can do pre-snap and his confidence and the leadership that he's already seems to be showing in that dressing room. I think he's going to be really exciting. It's going to be a tough enough season for them because he's not got a huge amount of weapons. But I'm looking forward to see what himself and Frank Reich can cook up between them. I think that's going to be fun to watch. That's something that I'm really looking forward to. A couple of interesting defensive players, I guess, on the rosters in terms of rookies. That we should probably discuss before we wrap. I know Will Anderson is one that I've talked about that I'm excited about. I think, Brian, the Eagles have got something of a steal in Jalen Carter from what we've seen as well.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, look, it was one of those on the night of the draft, especially as a Giants fan. And I know the Bears moved around with them at 9 and 10 in terms of the selections. But as he was dropping, you just inevitably knew he's going to be an Eagle in the next hour. But it'll be interesting to see how he gets on. I mean, this team last year had a very, very good season defensively, and there was various players that came through the rookie class last year, such as Davis, that didn't get the amount of snaps that we would have seen in other teams. If he was playing for another particular team, he would have played 60 to 70% of the snaps. It'd be interesting to see how aggressive they are in terms of using him so early in the season. But no, he looks a standout player. He would have been, with all due respect, the first round pick if it wasn't for the off-field stuff that we had that led up to the draft. So be interested to see how he gets on so early on in the season. Because sometimes it takes a player a bit of time to get used to the surroundings of obviously being in the NFL.
Colin, give us a defensive rookie who may have a shout at rookie of the year, although ultimately I suspect it's going to go to an offensive player.
To me, Weatherspoon with the Seahawks, he's exactly the type of corner that Pete Carroll likes. He is physical. He is confident. You need to have that confidence to play, a corner. I would agree with Richard Sherman. I know Michael Irvin made a big song and a dance when Richard Sherman rightly said that playing corner is harder than playing wide receiver. It is, because you're backpedaling. But Weatherspoon, I think, can be a really nice addition and brings a physicality that the Seahawks have lacked a little bit in the secondary since the Legion of Boom days. Bobby Wagner is back in there. Tariq Woolen. They will be, them going up against the Niners, them going up against other teams. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, that sure is, and they're going to hurt people. I think I like him, as you say. He could be this year's Sauce Gardner, although not that last year's Sauce Gardner looks like he's going anywhere anytime soon. Judging from what we've seen, they're set to light people up on defense as well, and we're not too far away from seeing whether that pans out as we've predicted. We're back on Thursday night, ahead of the Thursday night opener that we've already spoken about very briefly, the Chiefs against the Lions. We'll be going into that in a lot more detail, but that's our lot for now. Thanks very much for listening to the Irish NFL Show.